Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 89. We're going a little off the board, certainly not a well-known character. We're doing Reader from the Inhumans as picked by Ruby. So this is a newer character, certainly one that I dare say a majority of our audience may not necessarily be familiar with off the bat, but hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll have a little better understanding of the character. But before we do that, a couple things. First off, thank you so much to our two brand new patrons. We have Humble Citizen Andrew and Mayor Jacob. So that's it's just we love the support that we get every week and every month from our patrons. It's just again, 89 episodes in, and to think where we were when we started the Patreon with issue number 10, which are Deadpool episode, and you can go back and check that one out to see where we've come with that and where we are now. The support from our fans is just absolutely astounding, and we love and appreciate every single one of you. And the fact that you are all still here after a week off. I was on vacation with my family. It was much needed and well-deserved, and thoroughly appreciate it. And it was nice to stay quiet on social media. I know certainly a lot of our Twitter followers in particular know I'm very active on that platform. It was nice to just not focus on that and just sort of spend time with my wife and son, but recharged and ready and raring to go as we approach episode 100, which is going to be coming up in just a few short weeks. And we're going to have more information in the next coming episodes, but want to let you know now our 100th episode will be a combination AMA, ask us anything. So it'll be like a mailbag type, but there will also be an awards show aspect to it as well. And so we're going to be announcing a little bit more about that as Doc and I continue to flesh out the particulars of how that's going to go. But basically there will be categories, there will be nominees, you will vote, and the fans will decide the various superlatives and categories.
Looking forward to it.
It's going to be good. Our fan community is very vocal and certainly opinionated, and we love hearing from you. We love the feedback, good, bad, indifferent, or otherwise. And we've got another review that we'll be reading at the bottom of the show. But let's get cracking on Reader. So he is created by Charles Soule and Ryan Stegman in Inhuman number 4 from October of 2014. So as I said, not a very old character. And frankly, he's only been in 30 some odd issues of comics overall. So certainly not a deep well to draw from, but interesting stories nonetheless. So he is an Inhuman. And I know we've done a couple of the episodes on Inhumans, and we did Medusa, we did Kamala Khan. We have not gotten around to Maximus the Mad yet, and I think that one has definitely got to be on our list at some point in the future. But he is an older Inhuman, and he was part of a group that lived in Greenland. And once the Terrigen bomb went off, as detonated by Black Bolt, this is again about maybe 2012, 2013-ish. So all of a sudden, a new crop of Inhumans popped up, the NuHumans, as they were known. So Reader worked as a finder for the Ennilux Corporation. He would bring them NuHumans, and he was paid handsomely for it until he found out that this one particular Inhuman, a young girl named Xiao Yi, I believe her, Chinese, I apologize sincerely for the pronunciation. Xiaoyi, Xiao Yi, I think is how it seems to be pronounced. He brings her to Ennilux, gets paid for it. He's like, well, thanks. Then he finds out that the CEO of the company has basically functional immortality, but he needs to transfer his spirit to a new vessel. and that he has chosen Zhao Yi as the new vessel. And so they're going to kill her and use her body and put the old guy's head and brain in her body. And Reader goes, nah, I can't abide by this. So he rescues Zhao Yi and they go on the run. Then he joins a team organized by Black Bolt, who is very much not dead, to help search for Black Bolt's son, Ahura. And we talk a little bit about that in the Medusa episode. And he often works alongside Agent Frank McGee, who is also known as Nur. And Frank McGee is an Inhuman who was a detective with NYPD, and he operates sort of as an intermediary between the Inhumans and the human world. And most recently, he was helping Daredevil work on rooting out corruption in the mayoral office of one Wilson Fisk. And we just did Daredevil a couple weeks ago, and we did Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, some time back. So you can listen to, we touch on the Daredevil mayoral stuff in the Daredevil episode, but we don't really mention Reader because he's got a small part in it, but he's mostly helped. He's trying to help Daredevil figure out what is going on with the corruption. And it just occurred to me, sorry, it's late and I'm just getting back from vacation. We never explain what Reader's power is. I go through all this explanation of who he is as a person and this, that, and the other. I don't tell you what his friggin' power is. So Reader, as the name implies, he is blind. Anything he reads manifests. And so his eyes were taken from him back when he was younger because it was believed that, oh, if he can't see, then he can't make these things happen. But he can read Braille. So whatever he reads with his fingers becomes real. He gets 3 charges, so to speak, or 3 reads, each one weaker than the previous one. After 3 reads, he can just read at that point, just regular Braille without anything happening. But then he needs to go to sleep to recharge. Once he wakes up, then his powers are back at full capacity. And whatever he reads, anything, becomes real. So again, he's blind. He has a dog, Forey, that he brings around with him. And so if he reads the word see, he sees the world through Forey's eyes. If he wants to go to a particular place, he's away. He reads the word away and he's teleported away. I think the word back will bring him back in time, a particular amount of time based on how strong his reads are. So if it's the first read, he can go back. I don't know exactly how far. I think the second or third read, he's back like a couple of minutes. But it's a very interesting power. He uses it in very interesting ways. So I think we're done now on the background. Again, he's only been in about 30 issues. He's a fairly recent character. So the first thing I want to talk about is he is very much a loner. When we meet him, he is, as I said, he's operating as a finder for the Ennilux Corporation. And he brings Zhao Yi, who then goes by the name ISO, because she has the ability to change pressure. She can manipulate pressure, water pressure, air pressure, etc. So as he brings ISO to the Ennilux Corporation, and then he's like, all right, that's it. I'm out. Like I did my job. I'm good. Then when they go on the run, he brings her to Attilan so that she can learn and work with Medusa. And she's like, aren't you going to stay in Attilan or New Attilan? And he's like, no, it's not really my thing. He is very much a loner. He has connections and relationships with the Inhumans, but he doesn't want to stay in Attilan. And unfortunately, by virtue of the fact that he's not ever been a main character in these books, and again, admittedly, I wasn't able to read every single issue that he was in, but I never got a full understanding of exactly why it is that he doesn't want to fully embrace the Inhuman lifestyle. He does later on, but definitely initially, he's very much, yeah, they're there and I know them and we're cool, but I don't want to live that life, which is a very interesting thing for someone with his power set to have.
All right. Thank you for the setup, because what I'm thinking right now is something going back to my residency training where we would have sessions, a group of us. So imagine a group of psychiatrists in training along with one lead psychiatrist that's had decades of psychoanalytic experience and pointing out cases like this give wonderful opportunities to speculate and no one can call you to the carpet. So, hey, I'm going to have some fun with this. From what Anthony has described and what I've gathered, admittedly briefly, with this character, is that isolation begets isolation. If you have come to appreciate the fact that the world has been separated from you, and believe it or not, sensation is a huge part of that, then you can either embrace that idea or you can reject it. And it's very clear that readers accepted it. And his power in and of itself allows him to accept it because there's a part of it that he can manipulate. So that makes it a little easier, but to relate it to things that you and I as human beings can really understand, you're not going to have a perfect match with anyone in life. I'm sorry to say. You're going to have people that are fantastic matches under the circumstances and in particular situations. And hopefully you have people that are going to be lifelong interactors in your whole sphere of influence. But there are no guarantees to that. And as I've mentioned several times when it comes to the genetic lottery, there are no guarantees to the location that it's going to happen. You mentioned this whole idea of Attilan. That could just as easily be a rural environment where there aren't that many people other than the people you're born with. That could just as easily be a third world country that doesn't have opportunities for certain genders, certain races, certain tribes, whatever you want to call it. So in those situations, there is a certain benefit to developing a level of self-reliance and being able to become a chameleon. You end up fitting in anywhere because you didn't initially fit in anywhere. So I'm not going to necessarily say that it's automatically a bad thing, but the problem is if you don't develop that level of core relationship that you can rely on consistently and it not be an emergency. In other words, you don't want to, in theory, end up in a situation where the only way you interact with certain people is when you need something or they need something from you, because then it becomes purely transactional. I don't ever want to be in a situation with Anthony as my co-host, as my partner, as my best friend in life, to just end up saying, hey, man, I know you're a great guy, and the only time I'm ever going to talk to you is when I need $5. That's creating a certain level of distance. It's manipulating relationships to the point that you don't end up nearly as emotionally attached. And that's a huge loss. And the irony of it is if you only have relationships where you use them when you need them, then when you emotionally need something, then you're not going to get it. So it's a huge trade-off. You can get me for the practical things, but you're not going to get me for the quote-unquote impractical things that usually are more important. The emotional attachment, the love, the condolences when things happen in a bad way, or the support to build yourself back up when things go wrong. So Reader is very susceptible to that, in my opinion, because of the way he set his life up. When things are okay, he wouldn't care. Most people wouldn't. But when things are really going bad, sure, he has his own things that he can do to help himself, and it's great. But at the same time, the second that he needs others, they may not always see that in the same way that he does. And that can create problems for, I don't want to say for the rest of his life, but for a long period of time, unless he decides to put more effort into it. And I think some of the later books really does show that he has a bit more to him than what I'm saying right now. But when he was first introduced, that's the impression I got. I haven't read any of the latest stuff. I only have the initial things.
That's fair. And I don't think you're entirely wrong on that. Also, if you need $5, you can just ask me.
Dude, if I'm ever in the position where I truly need $5, then you know that things have gone really wrong.
What if you need Tree Fitty?
That damn monster? Nah.
I thought, all of a sudden I look up and I realized the Girl Scout was a 60-foot crustacean from the Paleozoic era. Get out of here, goddamn Loch Ness monster. I ain't giving you no Tree Fitty.
How long has it been since we had a South Park reference? It's been a while.
It has been quite some time. All the time, I just want to give them just a little bit. Damn it, woman, you're giving them money. You know they're going to come back for more. It felt good to get that out, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, now that we got that out the way, I mentioned very briefly he has a dog, Forey. He is the only consistent companion that Reader has in his life. In all the issues that we've read, that's his go-to. And I know it plays partially on the whole blind man guide dog, but their connection is very much more than just the guide dog. He is the companion. And to my recollection, aside from maybe when we did Yorick Brown, we haven't really touched on the notion of an animal companion. And if I recall correctly, we also didn't really talk about Ampersand as a companion when we did the Yorick episode. That was one of the issues we sort of left on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very curious to see what your take is. I know you always like to say that you don't like to repeat yourself. Well, here's a brand new issue for you. His only real friend is his dog. That says a lot.
Well, it says that he's an amazing human being because anyone that has a dog has some level of positive qualities, in my opinion. Okay, that's a very biased statement to make, but having pets is, for the most part, a wonderful situation to be in. It means that you have dedicated yourself to an animal that is going to be with you for a set period of time. And it's usually a length of time that's much shorter than human lives. So you're going to potentially experience the full gamut of emotions of a life in a matter of years. It may be a couple of decades. It may be 7 or 8 years, depends. But the point is, this is something that you sign up with from the start. And it could be from having a puppy. It can be from getting a foster animal. Either way, you're still signing up for that. I admit that I lean heavily towards dogs, but I could be talking about cats too, or any other pet. It's wonderful, especially at a young age, because you learn the idea of being there for someone and being responsible. They are going to be relying on you for food, for entertainment value, for exercise, for all the things that we as humans need too. And yet, there is something that I don't think I have the proper words for to describe, if you have that connection, how your pet views you. And yes, I will specifically talk about dogs because if you've developed it properly, they consider you the universe. They consider you everything. And that type of unconditional love is something that it's hard to put into words. I wish I could, but I don't think that's something that if you don't have a pet, I don't think you could truly appreciate. And I've actually been corrected on this podcast where I thought I pointed out the value that we place on humans one to another is much more than how a human views their pet. And on Facebook especially, I know I don't want to say I roasted, but plenty of people chimed in and said, Doc, you have no idea compared to how people love their pets. And I think that is true to a certain level. So I'm grateful that someone like Reader has his dog. And you already mentioned the part about being blind and the idea of a service animal is something that takes that relationship to a whole new level. I don't just mean the stereotypical idea of having a seeing eye dog. I'm talking about dogs that actually can sense when someone's going to have a seizure. I'm talking about animals that are known to be therapy dogs for people with severe anxiety, depression. I am not talking about the idea of having a peacock in Newark Airport. That was a gross misuse of that that idea. But it still stands that when you have someone that's a living being that is also reliant on you, that is not a child, doesn't understand quite the way that we do, but you know that there's something there, it's wonderful. And it's clear that you're willing to do anything for that pet, which brings up death. And unfortunately, the idea that you're going to actually have to make a decision depending on how that pet is doing. Do you have pet insurance? How many surgeries are you willing to go through if that pet has something wrong? Most people would say, I'll do anything. And yet, if you just don't have the bank account for it, some people have made difficult choices. Or you see that your dog is suffering as they get older in age. And you have to make that drive to the veterinarian. And I know many people that have gone through this. And it doesn't get easier. That grief is just the same as losing a human. So I'm saying that very soberly, like, this is what you signed up for. This is not a surprise, but that doesn't make it any less difficult. So you don't think about it on a daily basis, but as the years go on, you do start to develop this feeling in the back of your head or just this weight that starts to come over you, and you realize this is going to happen someday. And some people actually start to translate it to their own mortality. So how do you handle it past that point? Let's say you've already made the decision, it's happened, you've processed it, hopefully with your family or whoever else is important to you. Now what? Do you do this again? Are you actually going to get another dog and go through this again? And many people say, I will do it as many times as possible because I want that in my life for as long as I live. I want someone. I want more than one. I want varieties of pets, all these things. And they're all unique and they're all different. But that doesn't necessarily mean that saying that, you know what, I had one dog and that's going to be it for me. I don't know if I can do it again. That's okay too. That's true for most relationships, depending on how they've gone their course. If you end up divorced, does that mean you have to be best friends with the person you divorced? No. But you can be. The possibilities are there. So the idea of pets as microcosms for how we deal with each other is amazing. And if you can develop a healthy relationship with your pet, aside from dressing it up and putting the photos on Instagram, and, there's a reason why they have the trope, the crazy cat lady. It's not meant to be as derogatory as it seems. It's more along the lines of you end up not making the human connections that you should because you focus so much on, dare I say it, the non-humans. Sorry, I don't want to say Inhumans. That's just way too obvious, but there's a healthy way to deal with it. There's an unhealthy way to deal with it. And if you can't see the difference now, ask when one of your friends or even an acquaintance comes to your house and look at their face. And more importantly, watch their nose. Because if they can't tell, or you can't tell anymore what the difference is between certain smells and they can instantly, then that just means you have a pet house, which is fine. But if they make every excuse to leave instantly, then you may have crossed the line. I'll leave it on kind of that light note.
Well, it's funny when you bring up all of the pet stuff and the surgeries and everything, because as I've mentioned a couple of times in the show, my wife is a veterinarian and has spent years saving animals and also discussing with people, how far do you want to go? How much are you willing to spend on saving a pet? How far Are you willing to push the surgery and the potential treatment options? What are you willing to do? Some folks have a line. Some folks say, I will literally do anything. I will pay any cost to heal my dog, my cat, what have you. And as a dog person myself, who now has 2 cats, it's just the notion of a pet. And again, I was away on vacation for a week. We didn't have any pets. We just had to take care of the kid, which is a pet in and of itself sometimes. But coming home and seeing how the cats have reacted, even cats, even aloof, self-absorbed, little asshole cats still have that connection. And I, again, as a dog person, first and foremost, still appreciated getting to come home and scoop up my 2 cats, or as I call them, the idiot and the asshole, because one of them is an idiot and the other one is an asshole. But I like how you started off, basically saying like, oh yeah, that, anybody who cares for a dog is, et cetera, is a better person. There is one comic where Reader and Forey and a whole bunch of characters are squaring off in a fight against a group of other characters. I'm not going to get into it too much, but Reader is forced to defend himself. And he says, whatever happens, don't let them touch my dog. Like, he doesn't care about what happens to all the other people that he's with, but don't touch his dog. I mean, he's going to go John Wick on your ass.
Yep.
So now the third issue is the notion that, and we mentioned this a little bit in the beginning, he gets 3 reads and then he needs to sleep. So he has full control over his powers and he's very aware of what it is that he can do with them, but he has to be very judicious with his usage. And it's not common that we see a character who has these sort of limitations on their abilities, that they get, okay, I get one big one, and then one that's half as big, and then one half as big as that, and then I'm done. Like, you get 3 strikes and then you're out, and then I need a nap. That's a very interesting, just from a writing standpoint, I find it's a really interesting conceit, but psychologically that has to do something to you. And we see it all the time throughout the stories where he's like, I can't just use my powers. Like, so many times we see characters that could just use their powers. They just turn them on, turn them off. They use them whenever. He has to pick and choose exactly where he uses them. And that requires a level of control. It requires a level of foresight. And also, I guess, in a way, connected to that, says that he really has to pick his battles and say, this is not worth a read, that I'm going to have to come up with some other way. So there's a creativity that has to be utilized there so he can get out of having to just, okay, I'm just going to read a word and boom, I'm done. So that puts that creates a strain and a toll on someone, because you constantly have to be thinking, okay, what can I do to get around this power, and what the situation must be to force him into a situation where he has to use it. There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. And foreshadowing, I went kind of a whimsical route in the skit, but to talk about the issue itself and bring it to something that we all can understand, in a way, I'll say Reader is lucky because he at least knows exactly how many times he can do that. Since we don't have superpowers, we do have connections, networking, relationships. We have intimacy. We have desperation. We have certain emotions that, when we use them, and I hate to say it that way because I don't mean to make it sound so utilitarian, but when you have an ask of someone, I hinted at it earlier, it's a lot. It's not something to be taken lightly. If you're, let's say, in a job and you know what your typical tasks are on a daily basis, let's say for whatever reason, a unique situation comes up where you know you can't do this job by yourself. You have a coworker that actually not only can do that job, but they do it better than you do, but they hate it. They would rather do anything else in the world than what you're about to ask them to do. And if you do ask them, you recognize that there's going to be a certain refractory period. You're not going to be able to just go up to them, even if it's a tiny, tiny little favor. You're not going to be able to go up to them for a while and ask anything because they're just going to be super pissed off. So you now actually have a lot to weigh because you want this particular job to get done, but you also want to maintain the relationship with this person. So what's the tipping point? What's the balance? I don't have the answer. You're only going to know in hindsight whether or not it was the right thing to do. If the job still gets done by the way you do it, then maybe you pick up a new skill, even if it was painful for you and you didn't bother this other person. Maybe you found a negotiation technique that for whatever reason the person accepted and didn't feel as offended for you asking them. Maybe you found a way to do it together so that it was a situation where many hands made light work and it wasn't nearly as painful for that person and it was much quicker for you. You found a compromise. Or maybe the person didn't say anything, but then they don't respond to your emails for the next 3 months. So I can't pretend to say I have a perfect answer for any of those scenarios. It's just a matter of trial and error, which makes it feel even worse because now you're trying to ration something out and you don't even know what the ratio is. So that's one practical side to it. Another side can be the idea that you've been just dealing with something emotionally at home and you've been talking with your spouse or you've been talking with a friend or a neighbor. And it seems like every day when you're coming home, you're bringing up something new. And it's always something that's really draining you. And to be honest, it's draining the person you're talking to as well. So they have this ability to help you through. They have the ability to be your ear, but that ear is getting more and more bent and they're about to close it off. You don't know what that threshold is, but you've been testing it now day after day after day. It's okay to ask. It's okay to actually say, look, I know that I've been really, really weighing you down. Should I take a break? I'm not talking about saying like separation in relationships. I'm not going that far. I'm saying that often we wait for the other person to say to us, look, I can't talk anymore. I'm just done. I can't, but it doesn't have to get to that point. You can actually be proactive if you've been relying on someone to help you through and asking for their feedback too. Make it more of a two-way street. Because that's often what I see in these situations. When people are talking to me about the circumstances that they're going through, they're always talking about how, oh yeah, I know so-and-so, they always listen to me, they've always been there, et cetera, et cetera. And when I ask, well, then why are you here? They say, well, because they said that they had it and they left. Like, well, it's hard for me to work on that now when it should have been brought to someone else's attention, maybe to mediate or at least help the person develop other skills a lot sooner. So if you're already in that situation and you've already done that, and by the way, as always, I'm not putting myself outside of this realm, I'm just as guilty, then maybe I'll make this the call to action. The idea that it's great to have that support system, that support network, but check in with them to ask how they're doing. Because just because they're the greatest ear or greatest shoulder to lean on, that doesn't mean that shoulder doesn't get weighed down. It could be hurting pretty bad. And I'm not saying don't stop. You could continue to talk to them, but just even being aware that that's a possibility and acknowledging it to that person can be just the pickup they need so that they can keep going.
Well said. And I've said for years that even a rock needs a foundation underneath it to be supportive. And as someone who has kind of been the rock for many, many people, I have in turn my own rock. It's much in the same way that I'm sure therapists have their own therapists that they go to when they're dealing with issues, because you hear things all the time and it weighs on you as a professional. And you have to have an outlet for that. You can't take on all of that burden and then just dissipate it. I know you have your training, and obviously I'm sure that helps, but you still need someone to talk to about that stuff.
That's right.
And they have someone to talk to.
Yep.
And as I said a couple weeks ago in the call to action there, that if everybody helps everybody else, we all sort of just lean on each other just a little bit, we can all stand. So that's the similar thing. But yes, I agree. Talk to your rock, but ask them how they're doing. And I'm sure they will gladly take the opportunity to release a little bit of that. Hopefully it's not opening the floodgates, but if they can just get a little bit of that burden off, it helps. So we're going to take a short break. When we get back, we'll get into treatment. Stay tuned.
Everybody has a story. And not all of those stories are clear black and white issues, even when we think they are. We wonder, how did this happen? Or what is that like? Or what happens next? Are you sure you really want to know? This is Ignorance Was Bliss at IWB Podcast.
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what this Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all these games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Hello, I'm Chris Claremont. You're listening to Capes on the Couch.
Hello and welcome back. So, treatment in universe for Reader.
Oh, dear. So, based on the types of powers that he has, this can get pretty interesting. I don't know how to print out Braille, but I'm sure I could learn or get a printer to do it. I would take total advantage of these, of his reading. I would probably use single word mantra, very similar to what he already does, but I would put it in the therapeutic realm. So in other words, focus or relax or breathe. Like just these very basic but esoteric points that would allow him to create his own spiritual reality, because so much of this is focused on the physical reality, like what changes, what even the time dimension of it. There's more to life than that, though. And so I think there's a great opportunity. And since we're talking about comics, I think we can really get funky with it. Love, compassion, peace, just these basic things, and see what that does. Because let's be honest, especially the last one I just mentioned, can you picture potentially just how effective that could be, not just for him, but for society at large? I'm just wondering. I would really experiment with him on it. Pretty basic.
All right. So, out of universe, blind, kind of a loner. Obviously, we can't really get into the powers, but a blind antisocial man associates with his dog, doesn't really care for much in the way of people and connections, has few that he leans on if he has to, but doesn't like doing it. What would you say to him or her?
First thing I would do is make it as comfortable for them as possible. If they're bringing the dog to the session, I would ask the real basics. Well, what kind of dog is that? Oh, okay. How long you had them? What's their name? Oh, what do they like? I would focus so much on that dog, mainly because when you focus on the pet, you focus on all of the things that the person has applied to that pet in terms of their emotional responses, in terms of what they consider to be important in their life. If it's a matter of I wish I were making this up, a Chihuahua that's dressed up like with like a nice little coat and, things like that during the winter. Like, oh, okay. That's pretty cool. Who made that? Did you make that or you bought it? Oh, really? Oh, that's a family gift. Okay. Did they get something for you too or just for your dog? Oh, you just wanted it for the dog because you felt like it would be a waste of money on you. Really? You place that high a value? What about for yourself? That's fascinating. You've done this for the past several years and you haven't actually wanted anything from anyone? It just leads to these very genuine, organic, casual conversations that can become something more. Because if I go in with a basic shuffle of okay, why are you here? What's your name? Okay, have you been in the hospital before? Have you ever seen a psychiatrist or therapist before? I still have to ask all of those questions, but if I lead with it with a person like this, it's instant shutdown. They'll answer the questions, but they won't actually want anything and think it's a waste of time. So it's usually much more gradual, much more subtle. Because the second that you pretend that you're quote unquote their friend, they see right through that BS and they're out of there. So you have to develop it organically, and usually the pet is the way. Or whatever particular thing they enjoy is. It doesn't just have to be pets, but since we have that example to use directly, that's what I'm going to focus on. From there, and it's not a critique. I just want to clarify something. When you use the term antisocial, you're referring to the idea that the person is not socializing with many people, as opposed to the classic antisocial personality, which implies that the person has very negativistic traits that deal with manipulating people. So I just wanted to make that brief distinction. So from the just simple interaction piece, I would try and also figure out what is it that motivates them outside of people and see if I can incorporate people slowly into that. In other words, if the person, let's say I'm making this up, they're outdoorsy. They just really like hunting, fishing. That's why they have a dog. It's a great companion for those things. And not everybody wants to do that. I'm like, yeah, but that's one of thousands, if not millions of people around the world. So it's like, have you ever joined a club? Like just have that one thing in common. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every week. Just opening up and branching out a little bit for the sake of developing other social interactions that may lead to something more. I think we kind of discussed the inverse of this. I don't remember which episode, where the idea is once you're in a club, you feel like everybody shares the same exact traits all throughout, even though that's not the case. In this case, I'm actually starting from the basics. Like start with that one trait and see if something else grows from it with other people. So that's the way I would approach it. And I haven't actually used this statement in a while. This is a long process. This is not something that happens overnight. We're talking months here. So, hopefully the person starts to see the benefit from it, starts noticing their change in their interactions with people, including their mood, because often what accompanies this is a low frustration tolerance and irritability towards those new interactions. So if the person can surpass that hurdle, then once in a while you'll see like a dramatic change, but not usually. It's very subtle. Oh, there you go.
Excellent. All right. And I think it's good that we vary I don't want to say quick fixes, but the shorter term potential solutions versus the longer term solutions. And it has been a while since we talked about something that's going to take several months to address, but I think it's helpful. And I certainly think it's realistic in the sense that it certainly helps our audience understand that if they're going through a situation, regardless of what it may be, it's not going to be 1, 2, 3 sessions and then you're done. Or it's not going to be, oh, okay, we're going to work on this for a couple of weeks and then it's solved. Yeah, you want this, you want the answers, you got to put in the work. Simple as that. So we're going to lead him to the office and then see what happens when we get Reader and Forey on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Reader. I'm Dr. Issues.
Hey, Doc. I'm going to level with you. This, whatever this is a sort of thing that I'm only going to do if it's worth more than what I could be doing otherwise. And I assume you don't work for free.
No, I don't, but my sessions are just as valuable as your whatever it is that you do.
Touché. Well, I'll start there. I look for things. Pun intended, I guess. I'm not sad about my predicament. I find my way in the world just fine. I step in. I get rewarded for my main feature, and I show myself out. No muss, no fuss.
So what's the problem?
Well, you see, there's a limit on what I can do. Anything I do is a 3-shot deal. I don't want to be that kind of a chump.
To be honest, I'm not sure I fully grasp what you can do.
Yeah, let me get my card. I made it just for situations like this. Here we go. Away to the Hawaiian Islands.
What?
Yeah, I get that a lot. So, there is no philosophical banter here. If I read it, I achieve it. I could put those self-help gurus to shame with this.
Again, what's the problem?
You want to stay here for a while?
In theory, yes, but no. We got to get back to my office.
Wait, before we get back, I just need to warn you, it's not going to be quite so simple.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Okay. Away to Dr. Issues' office.
I don't get... So, wait, we're at an airport. I don't have my passport. Wait, it says this is Cleveland on this sign. What the hell?
It gets weaker. That's what I was trying to tell you. I need to build it up. I can sleep, and then it gets stronger again. My second read is only half as strong as my first read, and my third read is only half as strong as that one.
On a practical note, I'm going to book a rental car. My wife is going to kill me. On another note, I think I can help, but not here, not now. And on a final note, why is your dog here anyway? Does your dog do anything? Like, it's been totally silent. It's kind of creeping me out.
Oh, I keep him around for a very important reason. If I reach C, I can look through my dog's eyes. Comes in handy if I need a new perspective on things.
Oh, that's actually really cool. That's great. Who do you do with that on the human level?
Well, it depends on who else is around.
No, I mean, who do you trust so that when you're in need of support, you can always rely on them?
Nobody specific.
So it's just you and your dog?
Yes. Yes, it is. Is that bad?
No. Well, it makes for a possible lonely existence if you don't expand your circle a bit. I mean, plenty of people survive that way, but not many thrive.
Well, there aren't that many people that can relate to me. Their first impression, and they think I'm some charity case. And then they get an opportunity to know what I can do, and I'm some random tool. And then they know the limits, and I might as well be trash.
Has anyone actually said that?
No.
Then why are you saying it?
Okay. So I get your point. I jumped to a conclusion there, but I mean, that's the situation we're in anyway. I'm useless right now. If I want to recharge, I need some sleep.
Yeah, you do that, and I'll work on the transportation piece.
3 hours later.
Look, I'll take whatever frickin' size sedan you have. I don't need a Tesla here.
Oh, I think I can get us closer. Away to Dr. Issues' office.
And we're... Oh, I know those markers. We're on the turnpike. Nice. Well, it's definitely closer when I didn't ask for the help. Okay. Center. I get it. You know what you do. I know what you do. I know it decays. But you don't ask for input. If you want to build up some tolerance, maybe that would help. I don't know. Perhaps you could develop a meditation routine that minimizes the decline, or maybe I can give you some sort of prescription, for something to make a reproducible sedation. Either way, let's get a treatment plan together.
Are you done?
Yes.
Then maybe we should get into the car that you rented and get back to your office.
Well, we can discuss the details of your treatment plan along the way. And, I apologize for my reaction. I'm human too. Wow.
It's quite all right, Doc. I know what you meant. So you ended up like being John Malkovich then, just sort of dumped out on the side of the turnpike.
Yeah, pretty much, but at least I had a way to get around. And I just as an aside, I know that there's quote unquote controversy with this, but if I make a mistake, I do apologize to my patients. And there are times where I'm human and I react the way I do. I try not to let it get the best of me, but when that does happen, usually patients have been very forgiving of me. So that is a piece that, yes, it was for dramatic effect, but at the same time, gotta admit, sometimes things do get intense in therapy.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. So recommended reading for reader is the Uncanny Inhumans. It's nice to see him working as part of a team, even if it's not always, shall we say, smooth. So the next couple episodes coming up, we've got Uatu the Watcher, as selected by Matt, Damian Wayne as Ariel returns to the Bat family, and a pick from Brian to be determined. We'll definitely know by next week. And before we get into the plugs, a review read from SeaUnicorns on Apple Podcasts. Never heard comics broken down this way. These guys are great. The way they break down comic books brings it home, and they do a great job linking the woes and follies of comic heroes to real life. I think that's about as clear and concise a summation of what we've been doing for the past 89 episodes as we're likely to find. So thank you to SeaUnicorns. We encourage you to leave us a rating and review if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or Stitcher. And if you do leave us a rating and review, please send us a screen cap of that review and your address, and email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com, and we will send you a sticker as a way of saying thank you for your support, because those ratings and reviews help us grow in the ratings and rankings in the podcast sphere. And the more people listen to us, the more we can expand and spread our message of awesome South Park references from 20-something years ago. Triafiti. So that's going to do it. We are on all manners of social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. We have a Patreon. As again, we said at the top of the show, want to give a shout out and thank you again to Andrew and Jacob, our two newest patrons. You can be cool like Andrew and Jacob and get a shout out and all sorts of exclusive content. If you go to patreon.com/Capes on the Couch and subscribe, we've got a variety of levels there and some exclusive content that we will be coming up with. We come up with new stuff all the time, so you can go to that page and check it out. Also, our TeePublic site, tpublic.com, where you can buy cool stuff with our logo or the Y because comics. And as always, all of our episodes and more are found on our website, capesonthecouch.live. And that's going to do it for this episode. Doc, what you got to say?
I definitely need to read those few comments with Daredevil, because it's truly the blind leading the blind.
And there you have it. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.